son of the great Johann Sebastian. But Christian did not write as complicated music as Johann Sebastian, but elegant, tenderly melodic music. Mozart studied with him only a few weeks in London, and the boy was only 8 years old, and the music of this great man made an indelible mark on the young Mozart. This kindly gentleman here is Father Martini, whom he met in Bologna, Italy, when Mozart was only 15 years old. This was the greatest contrapuntist of his time. As you know, counterpoint is an important musical science and a very complicated one. Again, Mozart only studied a few weeks with this gentleman and absorbed the entire contrapuntal culture. Here you see a score before you, and it's an interesting one. When the Mozarts came to Rome, and again, Wolfgang was only 50 years old, they went to the Sistine Chapel. There in the Easter week, a very complicated work was sung, the Miserere by Allegri. It was not allowed to be printed or published. So Wolferl, our Mozart, listened very carefully, and after coming home, he wrote the entire score down from memory. This is only the first page, of course. Now, this is an important thing to know, because Mozart had what might be called an audiographic memory. He did not have to read books about music, as so many other people do. He just listened to the music, went directly to the music, and memorized it, remembered it for life. But now, let's look over at the map, where some of the important towns in Mozart's life are recorded. Here is Salzburg, his birthplace, from where he traveled over the Alps down to Italy, sometimes in the dead of winter. Milan, where his first operas were performed. Bologna, where he was made a member of the Philharmonic Society, and that was a great honor for a young man. In Rome, he was knighted by the Pope. From then on, he was Cavaliere Mozart. And then on these trips, he came to Mannheim, an important town where the finest orchestra in the world was assembled then. Again, imagine Mozart staying there for weeks and absorbing this wonderful orchestral culture. Altogether, this is an exciting life of travel, of work, of dazzling appearances, and great disappointment. You should read a Mozart biography sometimes. But now, let's listen to Mozart's operas. At the age of 12, Mozart wrote 2 operas. One of them was Bastien and Bastienne, and it really is still given today, sometimes only as a pop opera. It's, of course, a very naive shepherd play with only 3 people in it, and so is the music very naive. Let me play a little bit of the overture for you. You say, oh, wait a minute. Isn't that Beethoven's Eroica? Well, this is just one of those musical accidents. A simple, naive play. A 12-year-old boy writes opera. So on. The songs are just simple shepherd songs. For instance, poor little Bastienne thinks she is forgotten by her dear Bastien. My darling sweetheart now has left me. I cannot rest. I cannot sleep. And you know how fond Mozart was of musical jokes even at that time. For instance, here is the scene where Collat, the magician, looks into the crystal ball to see whether the two really will come together again. And the music becomes quite dramatic. And so on. Diggy, nonsense words. Dagi, Shuri, Muri, Horum, Harum, Lirum, Larum. We just can't understand how much fun 12-year-old children must have had with that. Now, after Bastien, we find 3 Italian operas which are forgotten today and maybe justly forgotten. Although they contain some quite nice music, They were quite traditional in their way. You see, they were commissioned by the 15-year-old gentleman. Commissioned, you'll say, what is that? You see, today, ladies and gentlemen, when an opera is being written, the composer first looks for a good text. After he has the text, then he waits for inspiration. Then it takes months to write the opera, and then nobody wants to perform it. Well, in these days, it was entirely different. The composer waited until he was given the commission to write an opera. Then it had to go very fast. Sometimes in 2-3 weeks, it had to be written. There was one more complication. He could not write it the way he really wanted it, because the singer told him what he wanted. The singer dominated the stage. You see, it was something like a tailor-made suit today. A custom tailor would not possibly think of working a suit before he knows what his customer looks like. And so in the same way, the singer told the composer what to write. It worked like this, for instance. Now, on the highest rank was the singer. See, he wanted to shine in his arias, and the composer had to write for him according to the range of the voice and the idiosyncrasies of this man. Below him, then, was the composer who served the singer. And on the lowest level was the librettist, the text writer, who now had to serve both of them. When the boy was 19 years old, he was a young man now. Another commission came from Munich for a comic opera. The result was La Finta Giardiniera. Translated, that would be, the make-believe Lady Garden or something of that sort. And I'm afraid the text sounds just like the translation of the title sounds. It isn't very good. It can't make up its mind, should it be a comedy or should it be a tragedy? And so, of course, the music is accordingly. Nevertheless, in spite of the plot in which everybody loves everybody else and not the person they should love, Mozart wrote some of the most sparkling music. Let me play some of that music for you. Here's a good example of the finta music. This is the introduction to the first vocal number. Elegant music, festive. Shades of Christian Bach. By the way, this work has been very successfully revived by the New England Opera Company in Boston, adapted and done in English. But now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to a very important work. A work that brings the mature Mozart to us, now 25 years old. A longed-for commission came from Munich to write an opera seria, that is a serious Italian opera. Every musician's heart beats higher when you hear the name of Idomeneo. The plot of this work was dramatic enough. Idomeneus, coming home from the Trojan Wars, runs into a terrific storm, and there promises to the gods that he will sacrifice the first person he meets on his home island if he only can be saved. This first person he meets is his own son. Now, of course, this plot had been done before, but the music that Mozart now used, language of that sort was completely unknown. That's the introduction to Idomeneo. This opera is also full with the most exciting choruses. Maybe what Mozart heard in Paris, maybe the Gluck operas here had a tremendous influence. There are processional choruses, there are storm choruses. For instance, here's an interesting example. Elektra just has sung a vengeance aria, and suddenly that storm of her soul changes to a storm out on the ocean. Listen to that. Changed. We are now at the seashore, and from a chorus way out there, have pity, we hear the cries of the shipwrecked. Much of this opera is recitative, by the way, and there again the beauty of Mozart's music. Lifted the simple recitative to something very unusual, Idomeneo says, "O son, dear son, can you forgive me for what I've done? Forgive me." This is a work, ladies and gentlemen, that should be heard very, very often. Now I think my time is nearly up. We have now followed Mozart from his very beginning over his youth operas to maturity. Now, the next time, I will have the pleasure to bring some of these very mature operas to you that you can hear just about in any opera theater, beginning with the abduction from the seraglio through to the magic flute. It really has been a pleasure for me being with you, and I hope I'll see you soon again.
The piece used for the educational television enter. This is National Educational Television.